welcome back. My name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury makeup. Today we are going over the new Viseart Violette Etendu palette. And this was kindly gifted to me by Anastasia Sparrow and Viseart Paris. So thank you so much for sending this over. I have a huge love for purples. Well, purple is my very favorite color, and green. So purple and green eyeshadows are like two of my absolute favorites. And this is the palette. I mean, if you've been looking for a nice selection of purple eyeshadows, I think this is a fantastic palette. Pretty much everything here has a little bit of purple in the shade. And let's go ahead and start off with some swatches. This is the top row, and these four are all matte shades. This is the second row, and you can see the last one here is a matte. And this is the bottom row. We have this one here, which is shimmery. The other three are mattes. So as you can tell, this palette overall has a mix of finishes in it. Let's go ahead and go over these one by one. Before we get started on color descriptions, I wanted to mention that this palette does have a 3-month shelf life. It's made in the United States, and these are the new 1.5 gram pan size that they've been doing. So this is the same size as what they have in the new Petit Four quads. Now, first up, we're starting off with the shade Embrace, and this is described as a light, cool-toned taupe with a matte finish. And for me, I actually see a little bit more peach in it than taupe, personally, so I would consider it a peachy taupe. And then next up, we have Blushing, which is a medium cool taupe with a matte finish. And I would agree with this. And I do see, I would say it's not completely cool. There is some warmth in here. So I'd say it's more of a neutral taupe than a cool taupe personally. Then we have Grenache, another matte. This is a soft mauve. And I think that is a pretty apt description. You've got a little bit of warmth in here and a little bit of rosiness. Then Fusion is a muted Merlot with a matte finish. I think that is a very apt description. Now, when I think of Merlot, I think of kind of like that plumish berry shade with a little bit of red in there. And that's kind of what you have here. So it's kind of like plum with a touch of red, like a reddish plum. For the second row, we have this shade here. This is a shimmer called Bisou, and this is a light lilac. Now, personally, I find this more to be a soft, rosy shade versus a lilac. When I think of lilac, I think of like a really light lavender shade. This is more pink. And then we have Wink, which is an iced lavender with a duochrome finish, and you can see that it looks silver. But as I'm moving, can you see that kind of like that pinkish purple flash in there? So I think the description there is apt. So you can see that there is like a pink reflect in there. It's like a pinky purple. Then the next shade that looks pink, this one has a blue shift. Can you see that blue as I'm moving? This is called Jezebel. This is Bright Orchid with a blue duochromatic shift. I think that's pretty accurate. Now, again, I think this is more pink than purple, but it's very pretty. Then this shade here is Liaison, and this is a muted heather purple with a matte finish. I'm gonna add just a little bit more here. This is a light shade, so there we go. And again, I still think this is like a little bit of a pinky purple. Then we have Haze, which is a soft lavender with a matte finish. And, I think it reminds me of one of those light purple crocuses. So when I think of lavender, I think of a little bit more blue in here. This one's not quite as blue as I would picture for true lavender, in my opinion, but instead, it reminds me of a crocus. Then this next shade is Violette. This is a cool toned violet with a shimmer finish. And this one is definitely going to be a blue-based purple. I absolutely love this shade, and you can see the shift on it. I have this on the inner half of my eyes right now. This I think is my favorite shade in the palette, this and Jezebel. So then we have Passion, which is a vivid purple with a matte finish. You can see this is going to be a bright plum purple. So there is going to be some pink undertones in here. And then the last shade is Elderberry. It's a deep elderberry with a matte finish. You can see this one definitely has more of those reddish pink undertones as well. And yeah, I think very pretty. Now let's take a minute to look at the packaging. This is the box that it comes in, and the back of the box, does have all of the color names, and you've got the ingredients and all of the, pertinent information. So that's that. And then what I really wanted to show you is this out here. So the Viseart packaging, it kind of has this like moleskin finish, over cardboard. And it does have a magnetic closure. You've got this little ribbon loop to help open it up. But look at this pattern on here. Usually these types of like printed palettes, they seem to have been pretty much exclusive to Europe. So I think it's really nice that here in the States, we've had the opportunity to get some of these. And I do like how the palette does include the information here, but it's kind of hidden. So it's not disturbing the beautiful packaging here on the outside. So this is the Violette Etendu palette, and we do have a mirror here. It comes with, one of those plastic covers that you tear off, and then you have a plastic piece here that you want to keep since, you will be able to see the edges here. And this is kind of an extension of one of their previous palettes that's been discontinued. And the Liaison palette, has some similar colors to it. I unfortunately do not have that one, but there are some comparison photos on Instagram. Another MK has photos, as well as Maria Chung. So I will leave their Instagram handles down below. So if you already have Liaison and you're looking for some comparisons, check them out. Let's go ahead and discuss my thoughts, and then I'm going to share the looks that I created with this palette with you. So overall, I really love this palette. I love purple shadows, and I really like being able to have some more neutral shades here to mix them in and kind of create a full look. This palette is so hard for me to use because there are so many shades I want to use every time that I feel like I'm going overboard. But I love them, and they really do shine on their own. But, it's just so hard to choose what to use. My two favorites, as I mentioned, would be Violette here, which is the blue base purple, and then Jezebel. And I have Jezebel kind of over top some other shades here on the outer half. So I think they're gorgeous. I think the two of them are gorgeous paired together. I love all of them. I am particularly thrilled with the shimmer shades. I love the mattes, and I love that they're included. I think it's important that they're included. I just absolutely love the shimmers. Now, as for quality of the shadows, I actually found that these were slightly less powdery than some of the other Viseart shadows that I had. And I didn't really have any issues with fallout with really any of the shades. Occasionally if I apply it improperly, meaning like, for example, I take like a pencil brush and I swipe instead of pat, maybe I'll have some shimmer fall off or something, but nothing major. And I didn't experience any fallout when using them, in a typical fashion. So you'll see in the looks that I really just don't have issues with fallout with these, which was really nice. All of the shades really blend well together. They're easy to use. You can use them dry or wet. With these shimmers, I've used them dry and I've used them wet. They're obviously going to be a lot more subtle dry. I actually really prefer these ones wet. So that's not normal for me. I usually prefer them dry just because I like that subtle look, but I have really been enjoying using these ones with a dampened brush, and I've used Inglot Duraline or just plain water, and I think they give a beautiful, beautiful look. I just sprayed my arm with a little water here so it's wet, and I'm going to swatch just the shimmer shades on here so you can kind of see what they look like. So these are the 4 shimmer shades, and I was going to try and pair them. Let's see if I can do that. So there's wet versus dry, and that was Bisou. This is Wink, Wet versus Dry. Here's Jezebel. You can see how much more of that blue shift is evident. And then down here we have Violette. So I just think that they are gorgeous, and you can see why I really like these shades wet. They just, you know, they're smooth and sparkly and shimmery and just so full of color. Personally, I absolutely love this palette. I love the shades here. I love how you've got the pinky purples, but you also have those more blue-based purples. And I feel like a lot of times when, you know, there are purple palettes, they kind of leave out a lot of the blue purple shades. This Violette shade I feel like is very important, and I love having these, you know, lighter matte shades to go with it that are still a little bit more blue based than some of the others. Now, although this palette in general leans on the cooler tone side, again, we do have some little bit warmer tone purples as well. So I feel like this would work for a variety of warm and cool lovers. Now, keep in mind, you can do some subtle looks in here. You've got plenty of mattes. You've got more mattes and shimmers in here, which really do change the way your looks come out. So you can use the purples just as a light accent, or you can go all out like I did. And you've got a variety of looks here. Even these neutral shades, you know, they still have a little tinge of either like a rosy shade or a purpley shade to them. So they're not going to be a straight up, you can use them as a straight up neutral, but I'm just saying there's going to be a little bit of a nuance to them that kind of helps them stand out from, you know, just a completely neutral palette. Now, personally, I would love to see a palette just like this with greens. I think that would be a fantastic sister for this palette. They have already actually released another palette called Ming Set, which is a warm tone palette. It looks gorgeous. So this is the cool tone version, and then there is a warm tone version with more like those like rusty coppery shades. It looks really pretty. So if you're interested in warm tones, you might want to check out the Ming Set palette, which was just released. So I haven't seen it in person yet. One other thing I'd like to mention, if you're unfamiliar with Viseart, all of these pans are magnetic and they come out, so you can rearrange these, and they're very, very easy to remove. So you can see how easy it is to lift out, and you can create your own palette with them. They sell empty palettes, or, you know, just rearrange what you have. And again, these are going to be the same pan size as the new Lilas, or well, Petit Four palettes. So the Lilas, the Praline, Framboise, and Chocolat. And I think these shades go really nicely. I would love to see, you know, these two here mixed with the Lilas palette. I think that'll be stunning. And one last thing I wanted to mention, as I said, there are some of these more pinky purpley shades in here, more pinky shades. And a lot of the pink shades that we've been seeing recently have been warmer toned pinks and roses. For example, the Chanel quads and so forth, those have all been warmer toned. These are going to be cooler toned pinks. So while there is some warmth to some of the shades, overall, this is still going to be a cooler toned palette in general. So let's take a look at the looks I created, and then we'll meet back here. I'll give you guys final thoughts and any comparisons I have. On my lids, I have the Viseart primer, and then I'm taking the Sonia G Classic Crease. I'm going to go into this first shade, Embrace. I'm going to deepen that up just a little bit with the shade next to it called Blushing. So I'm just being a little bit more targeted with this application. Next, I'm taking the Sonia G Worker 3, and I'm going into this shade here at the bottom called Haze. I'm going to put this right on the lid. Then I'm going into the shade next to it, which is called Violette. And I'm going to put this on the outer part of the eye and spread it in to meet. Next, I'm going to take some Inglot Durline, and I'm just putting a little bit on the back of my hand, and I'm going to dampen my brush in this. And I'm going to go into this silvery shade here, Wink, and it says it's an iced lavender with a duochrome finish. So I'm quite curious to see what this looks like. I'm going to put this all over the lid on top of these. I'm going to get just a little bit more Duraline and redampen the brush. And I'm going to go into that shade that I used on the outer portion, which is called Violette. Just going to add a little bit of this to the outer portion here. Okay, those colors are so beautiful. While my brush is still a little damp, I'm going to go into this bright shade here, Jezebel. This is a bright orchid with a blue duochromatic shift. And it's just a little bit damp, and I'm just taking a little tiny bit and adding it to the center here. Kind of just where those colors kind of hit each other. So I'm taking the Esom T05, and it is slightly dampened as well. And I'm going to go into this deep shade here called Elderberry. And I'm just going to stamp this along the lash line. Taking the Sonia G Pencil 1, and I'm just kind of blurring out that line a little bit. And then I'm going to go back into the shade Wink. This is, the pencil brush is dry, and I'm just going to smudge a little bit of this on the lower lash line. And for the inner corner, I'm going to go into the Burberry Light Medium palette, or what is it called? The Fair to Light palette. And I'm going to go into this white highlight, which is just called White. So I just swirled the pencil brush in here, and I'm just going to add this to the inner corner. And whatever's left, I'll just put a little bit right under the brow. Going back with the classic crease, and I'm just going to buff this area here. All right, so overall, I think it's really pretty. I probably played with too many colors. I would use fewer colors on a regular basis, but they're just so fun to play with. So I'm gonna finish my makeup. And this is the final look from a distance. This is the Chantecaille Future Skin Cushion Foundation in shade Aura. And I have that topped with the Westman Atelier Baby Cheeks Blush Stick in Doo Doo, as well as the Westman Atelier Rare Light Cream Luminizer in Ice Bow, which is this shade here. And on my lips, I have a sample of the Shiseido Shimmer Gel Gloss in 07. And I use the Syrah Noir Lash Tint. So I'm doing a wear test on the foundation, so everything was just tapped on very, very lightly. Taking the Sonia G Blender Pro, and I'm going to go into this second shade here called Blushing. And I'm not using any primer or anything. I'm taking the Chantecaille Shade and Sweep brush into this shade here, Fusion. Just going to apply this on the outer half of the eye. And next I'm going to go in with the same brush in this light shade here called Bisou. This is a light lilac with a shimmer finish, and I'm going to put this all over the lid. And I'm patting this on. Taking the Rever 23 into this shade Wink. Just going to apply a little bit of this to the inner corner. I'm taking the same brush. I'm going into the bright purple Passion. So I just swirled my brush into it, and we're going to line the eyes with this. And I wiped off the brush mostly, but I'm going to go back into the Wink shade and I'm just going to add a little bit more of this to the lower lash line. I'm just taking the Shade and Sweep with no shadow on it, and I'm just kind of running it along the lower lash line. And for a little emphasis, I'm going to take my finger into the shade Violette and add this to the center of the eyelid here. So I'm actually making it a little wider at the base, so it's actually more triangular. And I'm just taking the Shade and Sweep with a tiny bit more of the shade Bisou and just kind of dabbing over the edges here. That way the Violette shade is not really all that noticeable, but it's just kind of something. Honestly, I probably should have just left that alone. I don't know if I like it with the Violette there. I'm gonna go over it again with the Bisou. All right, so here is today's look, and I'm gonna finish my makeup. This is the final look from a distance. So I have the Chantecaille Future Skin Cushion Foundation on in shade Aura with a light dusting of the Chantecaille Eclat Dew powder, and then I have the Lip Chic in Honeysuckle on from Chantecaille, as well as the Philanthropy Cheek shade in Bliss. That's the one with the butterfly for the cheeks. The highlight from the Rose Coral, or the Rose Duo from the summer collection with the, forget which one's on that. I think the whale shark is on that one. And I think that was everything. Yeah. And then the mascara is the Chantecaille Longest Lash. So there we go. We're starting off with the Refer 16, and I'm going to go into this shade here called Grenache. So I've got some on my crease brush, and I'm just gonna lightly buff this in, and I have the Viseart primer on today. Next, I'm taking the Refer 14 in the shade next to it called Fusion, and I'm just gonna deepen up this crease just a touch. Then I'm taking the Stone G Soft Shader. I'm going into the bright purple called Passion. And I'm just going to dab this on the outer portion here. Well, actually, we'll move it in a little bit. So it's right here. Then we're going into Elderberry right next to it. I'm going to put this on the very outer corner here, just to deepen that a little bit. Just going to add a little bit more of the Passion, just right here, making sure I go to the center. Next, I'm going to dampen the brush, and I'm just using my Evian spray water. And I'm going to go all over the lid with Violette. I wiped off the brush and I dampened it again, and I'm going to go into this shade here, Bisou. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this kind of right here in the inner portion. And I'm dragging it into the crease. Next, I'm going back in with the Refer 16, and I don't have any additional shadow, and I'm just gonna kind of buff. Okay, I just want to add a little bit more to the outer half, and so I dampened my brush. I'm going into Jezebel, the bright pink one, and this is the one with the blue duochrome shift, and I'm just going to add a little bit of this to the outer half. Wow, I really like that shift. That is stunning, and I love the way those two colors, the Violette and the Jezebel, I love the two of them next to each other. I actually really like Jezebel on top of Violette because it kind of, you know, adds a little bit of blue in there. For liner, I'm taking the Refer 23. I'm going to get this wet, and I'm going to go into the shade Wink, which is the silvery shade. I'm gonna put this along the upper lash line. Oh, made that a little thicker than I want it. We'll just have to go with that. For the lower lash line, I'm gonna go into Violette. Taking the Forever 23, going back into this Bisou shade, and I'm just adding a touch more to the inner corner and dragging it down to the lower lash line. So that's it. I am going to add some black liner to the upper lash line and finish my makeup. I'll be back. And this is the final makeup look for today. So I have on the Chantecaille Future Skin Cushion Foundation in the shade Aura, lightly dusted with the HD Perfecting Powder from Chantecaille as well. And then on my cheeks, I have the Patrick Ta Monochrome Moment blush in She's Sincere, which is a light peach. And I also use the contour shade from the Burberry Essential Glow Fair to Light palette. On my lips, I have on the Chanel, this is the Rouge Allure Velvet Extreme lipstick in Eternal. And there we go. I hope that was helpful. We're going to start off with some comparisons. And first I want to show you the Petit Four Quad in Lilas. And these shades really are not similar. So I'm just going to swatch all four so you can kind of see them. But the matte shades, you know, they look like they might be a little bit more similar to some of the shades. And you can see here that they are in general going to be a little bit warmer in tone. They're a little bit more mauve. And even this shade here, which is called Fondant, this one, it reminded me of Wink before I received it, but you can see that the Fondant shade in the Lilas palette is definitely going to be a bit more pewter, and you've got this like lavender shift to that as well, whereas Wink is going to be a lot brighter, and the shift on there is actually more pink. There we go. So let's just bring that back. So I feel like these two shades are the closest, but again, this one's going to be a little bit more brown and peach, whereas this is going to be a little bit more of a dusty rose. The next shades I want to swatch, this is the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate Eye Palette in number 2, Moonlit Violet, and I'm just going to swatch these two purple shades. So put these here, and you can see here that the tone of the deepest purple, let me re-swatch that. All right, so you can see here that the lightest purple in the Tom Ford Quad actually pairs a little bit better with the Lilas. It's got a little bit more of that mauve tone, a little like dusty rose mixed in there, but it's kind of like a shimmer version of this shade here. And there aren't really any shimmery versions of that in the Violette. Now, this deeper shade here, you can see is going to be closest to Violette, but it's kind of like a mix of Violette and Elderberry and a shimmer finish. So there are some similarities, but it's not really close enough. This is definitely going to be a warmer purple, and it's also a bit deeper. And then I also wanted to compare the Viseart Theory palette. This is number 4, Amethyst. And just for reference, these are the 2 gram size. So you can see the difference, the 2 grams here in Theory versus the 1.5 grams. So I'm going to swatch all of these so you can see them. These are the 3 mattes. We're going to put these here. And you can see there's a little similarity here between the Elderberry shade and the deepest one in the Amethyst palette. And you've got a little similarity here with this one. Let me put those together. Okay, so here's the one from Amethyst. You can see that those are going to be pretty similar. The one in the Amethyst palette is going to be a bit deeper. This is the lightest matte from the Amethyst. You can see that it's going to be a little bit pinker and rosier. And the deepest one here, you can see those are very similar. They're close enough to be a dupe in my opinion. Very similar there. Next, these are the 3 shimmers. So I'll show you these separately here on the back of my hand, and then we'll pair them up. You can see that the lightest shimmer here is more of a soft pink. This one in the middle is a little similar to Bisou, but you can tell already that they'll be a little different. And the deepest one is closest to Violette, but again, it's really not going to match up. Let me just show you those together. So our lightest pink shade, I'll just stick here because it doesn't really pair up with any of them. You can see it's going to be a soft, more of a ballet pink in my opinion. This is the middle one, which is most similar to Bisou. Show you that. So you can see that they do have some similarities there. They're actually a little bit closer than I thought at first, but the one, the Amethyst palette, is a little bit darker, a little bit warmer. Very, very close, close enough. And then this is the deepest purple. You can see that this one's gonna have more of a red base. It's not as cool, it's a little bit warmer in tone, and it's more of like a reddish plum shade. So if you have any of these palettes, really what you want to do is figure out which shades in here are most unique to you, which ones are you really drawn to, and is it worth picking up if you have some of those with similarities. So for me, this palette is absolutely fantastic. I love purple shadows. I love having the ability of having these, you know, brighter, more cool tone purples, as well as the mix of neutrals with it, because I find it to be very versatile. It has now been several hours since I applied everything. I just wanted to show you how well the shimmers and everything have held up. There has been no fading, no fallout or anything. And now it's time for my final thoughts. I absolutely love this palette. I love the packaging. I love the colors. You know, I love purple eyeshadows. I know purple eyeshadows are very polarizing. People either love them or hate them. There aren't really too many people who are ambivalent. So it's one of those shades that people just have very strong opinions on. And I really love how this palette includes more neutral tone shades so you can get a complete look, or you can just use the neutrals and just add a pop of color, even just as like an eyeliner or something. I love how we've got more of the blue tone purples as well as the pink tone purples. But what I love about the pink tone purples is they are cooler in tone. A lot of the pink tone purples recently have been very warm tone, and I really love having these cooler tone options. I think this palette is gorgeous. It's exactly what I have been looking for personally. The shimmers I find to be really gorgeous. I love the subtle shifts of color in, for example, in Wink, you've got that subtle lavender shift. And I love just seeing like the blue shift here in Jezebel and so forth. I think they are just stunning, stunning colors. I love how everything performed and held up. And as I mentioned, I do really like using the shimmer shades in this palette wet, whereas usually I prefer to use them dry, but these ones in particular, for some reason, I love how smooth they are wet and the impact that they give. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about this palette. I think it's gorgeous. If you like purple shadows, I think this is definitely worth the investment. And again, if you have any of the shadows that I compared it to, or perhaps if you have Liaison, you know, take a look at some other comparisons. I don't have Liaison to compare, but take a look at Another MK and Maria Chung on Instagram. I have both of their handles down below in the description box, and they have comparisons of Violette with Liaison. So you can kind of see how similar they are. Personally, I really hope that Viseart considers doing another one of these palettes with greens, so greens and neutrals, and I'd love to have some cooler tone greens. You know, a lot of green palettes are more of that yellow olivey green, which I like, but I'd like to see some cooler tone ones as well. Now, just some information about purchasing this palette. It was originally available only on Viseart's website for the first few days, but now it is available at other retailers, Viseart, Muse Beauty Pro, Camera Ready Cosmetics. And if you want to purchase through Camera Ready Cosmetics, they do have a code CRC10, which gives you 10% off the palette. Muse Beauty Pro also has a deal going on where you can pick this one up along with its sister palette, Ming Set, which is the new warm tone palette with like these rusty shades that just came out. So if you get those two palettes, and I think it's an eyeliner and an eye brush. So you get all of those for $88. So there are a couple deals going on where you can still kind of get this on sale. And I will leave all of that information down below in the description box. I just want to give one more huge thank you to Anastasia Sparrow, Viseart, and Camera Ready Cosmetics for sending me this palette. And I'm so incredibly grateful and honored to be included. And I absolutely love this. So Viseart has released quite a few products recently. And, you know, I really love the Petit Four palettes. I really love this one. So I know a lot of you are going to ask me what my favorite is. And I would have to say it's this and the Lilas. And I think this pairs really well with Lilas. So I really like all of them. And I love how all of these are in the 1.5 gram pan size. I actually think this is like the perfect pan size for me. It's a little bit bigger than the Petite Pro palettes, which, you know, I like that size as well. It's great for traveling and everything. But the 2 gram is a little large for me. Like I have so much eyeshadow that's definitely something I won't get through. So this is really the perfect size. And I like how these new ones, you know, they're going to be really easy to kind of move around and, you know, mix and match. So if I had to pick, I would pick this one and the Lilas. And I don't know. If I had to narrow it down further than that, you know, I think it would depend on what you already have in your collection. Again, this is coming from somebody who is a purple eyeshadow lover. So, you know, that if you're not somebody who likes purple, then you're going to end up with a different choice. But overall, absolutely love this. A huge thank you again to Anastasia and Viseart and Camera Ready Cosmetics. And I truly appreciate it. Don't forget, if you're interested in this palette and you're interested in any of the deals I mentioned, Camera Ready Cosmetics has 10% off. Muse Beauty Pro has that bundle deal. I will leave that information down below in the description box. So check that out. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or anything about this palette, please let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope to see you next time. Have a great day and stay safe and healthy. Yeah, I said yes before.
Yeah, thank you.
Just be careful, okay? Use a stool.
Okay.
Or I'll be down in 1 minute, okay?
I'm gonna do this by myself.
Okay.
I have to open the cookie jar first, right?
Yes, just be careful not to drop the lid on the floor because it will break, okay?